So first, I'm going to apologize to the juniors in the room because in 2 or 3 weeks, I will be presenting this exact same talk. But I figure let's start with Producer Club and, you know, sign in and leave if you don't want to hear it again, is how I'm looking at it. So today's topic is just going to be an introduction to Agile. With anything like this, stop me a lot with questions, please. The whole point is for me to not just run through this material, but for you to ask lots of questions. And to that point, ellenbeeman.com, I love to blog, even though I haven't had time in the last few months, and I have at least 5 articles about Agile on my website, and I want to do some more that are more student-focused. Those ones are more professional-focused. So that's the first caveat I want to make, is on my blog, I talk about Agile for professional studios where people are working 40 hours a week together. That is not you. So I'm going to talk a lot about these are processes and techniques that we use and just what Agile is. But please, please, please do not take away that you must do every single one of these things because you're student teams and it just would be too much. So let's see. So ironically, this is the slide from my talk for Game 350. But you're all producers, so let's move on. So Agile is, there's actually a bunch of different things that fit into it. Things you may have heard. I think Samir talked a bit about, you know, Lean and Kanban and Spiral and all these other things. I'm going to just generically refer to it as Agile at this point, just for the sake of simplicity. If you have questions about any of the, particularly things like Kanban, please just come talk to me because I love talking about this stuff. But so I'm just going to generically call it Agile. So Agile being a collection of processes, but really, I mean, I think of it as more of a philosophy for approaching software production. I'll get into that in more detail. But the biggest reason, 3 reasons, why studios are using this is because it actually works. There is something that sounds incredibly silly and naive, but is actually very true, that if you take a team of smart, talented people and you let them have a say in their own destiny and how they're going to do their work, and you develop specifically processes that are designed for better communication and feedback and improving how you work together, they do better work. Shock, amazement. And, this is the big one, they don't quit. Employee retention is something that when all of you are working out in studios, you're going to start seeing is a huge, huge problem. It is very easy for people to vote with their feet at a job. And I mean, you've gotten a tiny glimpse of it just with, you know, what happens with student teams here. But in the game industry, it's completely, it goes to a scale that is pretty remarkable. The last studio I was at, 1/3 of the server team quit 1 week. That made it kind of tough to do server-backed projects, which was the whole point of the company at that time. So the fact that this works, it also gives you that extra benefit. The other thing is if you do it right, yes, it adds absolute predictability to your projects. It does a bit of that at the cost of the feature creep that executives like to do, but that's okay because that's what makes projects late and sometimes makes them turn out bad as well. So this is always a painful slide for me. Waterfall is the old school method of doing this, and basically you define your milestones at the start, you define what you're going to deliver, and then you deliver. I did multiple what we call development and publishing contracts running my own studio under this form. So let me explain to you what happens in Waterfall. So we agree that 3 months in is end of design phase, 6 months in is first playable, 12 months in is alpha, 3 months after that is beta, 3 months after that is gold. So, you know, like a 1.5 year schedule, which is, for a medium-sized game, not impossible. So we get 3 months in, the executives want to change something. Okay, that happens. Sometimes it's for stupid reasons. Sometimes it's for very good reasons. The market has changed. We need to change how we do stuff. So now, everything shifts back. Everything moves. The other thing is if you don't do this right, you don't have enough iteration time. I hope that things like playtesting and how we structure the game project milestones here have taught you the value of iteration, that you rarely get it perfect on the first try. It is going back and fixing and changing things is how you get to something good. This process, you can do it if you schedule for a really healthy alpha, but we had the project we did for Virgin Interactive, I scheduled for a large alpha. They ate it up. And we ended up with not enough time to do all the things they wanted. The difference with this and Agile can basically be summarized as you're not lying to yourself about your deadlines as you go. You're being more realistic about them. Yeah, and this is the thing. This is, if you take nothing else away, it's this concept that at the start of the project, you know the least about it. So why, at the start of your project, should you schedule it out for the next 2 years? Why is that necessarily going to work in your favor? Yeah, I actually want to just talk about this one. So the last game that my husband and I did, we got about halfway through it, and we suddenly realized that little wind-up toy mechanical mice enemies were the business. They were awesome. They were cute, and they were fun. And I had Rich Rowan's wife, who does voiceovers, do kaboom and other things like that for them to scream as we blew them up. And it was awesome. And we didn't know that at the start. I have all these wonderful, wonderful concept sketches of robot opponents that we didn't use because we went with that secret sauce thing we discovered at the end, or halfway through, I should say. So yeah. Okay. So this is the big one here. Agile, you're just acknowledging that things are going to change. So I have seen Agile done poorly, and I have a phrase which I think I use in this deck called cake and ice cream for dinner, which is you can do Agile really, really wrong by just not prioritizing the work correctly. But it is something where you know there's going to be changes, you know there's going to be iteration. The project that you start at the beginning is not the project you're going to ship. You're just acknowledging that up front, which is tough for some executives in particular. Agile is only now starting to take hold at Microsoft. In fact, I gave a seminar on Agile there last year. The thing is, the executives at Microsoft kind of like to know what they're going to ship. And so they're just kind of finicky that way. I respect that, but the reality is, starting at the beginning and saying, this is exactly what we're going to ship, may not get you the best product in the end. So everything from here on, I'm going to talk about sort of the approach of Agile and then some nuts and bolts stuff. So the biggest one, and either Jen or I will do a talk on Agile stories where we'll get into this in meat, I mean, in substantial detail. Test-driven development. So actually, let me see if I have it. Yeah, OK. I don't think I actually have too much of a sample story, but I'll continue on that. But the main point here being that effectively QA now drives your project. So we're already into the realm of things that may not work that great for a student project because you don't have a dedicated QA person. We don't want you to have a dedicated QA person. But taking this philosophy to heart could help you deliver better, even as a student team. So this was, back in the day, old school. The second or third game I did at Origin in the Wing Commander series, I did a bunch of Wing Commander add-ons after Wing Commander 2. They would just be like, you build your game, you throw it over the wall to QA. QA's all the way at the other end of the building, and you hand the game to them, and then they send back a list of bugs, and you fix them, and you ship. Done, right? Yeah, I was like, that doesn't seem very good to me. This was long before anybody even talked about Agile. And so I said, this one guy, Brian Martin, I want him on my project from day one. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, trust me. I have a good feeling about this. I think this will work. And what wound up happening is by the time we got to QA, we had him on our team the whole way through. We got to QA, project went into QA, it came back with 32 bugs, total. This is insane. People were like, did they actually test your game, Ellen? I'm like, yeah, no, they did a proper QA run. And I explained it. Brian found everything as we went. And as a part of that, he would find something and he would be like, so Ellen, you know this mission where you fly out to the capital ship and you have to destroy it before you can go to the next mission? I'm like, yeah, I know that one. He'd be like, there's no capital ship there. I'm like, oh, that would make it hard to win. Why don't I fix that now instead of waiting 3 to 6 months later in the project when I may have forgotten how I scripted that, or I have to remember how I scripted it. Instead, I scripted that yesterday. Gosh, I'll fix it today. Made us hugely faster than any other team at that time. The Agile school, though, is even better. It's not like you have one person. Your QA team is part of the team from day one onward. So this is, here's the main thing here. What you do when you have embedded QA is, I mean, these are smart, talented people. You want to put them to work. You put them to work from day one. And what you wind up doing, this is the whole concept of an Agile story, is you design the work to be tested. So it's not just like, I'm going to, I don't know. I'm going to add a new level. Actually, somebody give me a feature of something you're working on. Anybody? Okay, fine. I'll just, let me just come up with something. So I am designing, let me go back to the last project I did at Glue. I am designing an interaction where you can view all of your inventory in a scrolling, what's called a cover flow animation. So this is part of the game. So we have this really interesting thing. What that means is I have to design that to be tested and verified. I, as the designer, write out the specifications of how this will be tested, not just here's the work, design something. It's like I say, this is kind of a mind shift more than anything else. So, like I say, Agile stories, if you want to get a head start, you can read the article on my blog. But think of it as when you write the specifications of the work to be done, you are literally saying, here's what must be tested. So for the cover flow animation, it was, I can, what are the things that QA can test? I can open this inventory viewing mechanism with a button. Okay, that means I have to have that button so I can get into this from the main menu. Then I want to be able to see all of my inventory. This means that I have, I am dependent on the inventory system being ready. So we acknowledge that from the start, saying, is this available yet? If not, we wait on the story, or we get that done before this story would begin. Then there's things like, here is the actual animation. Cover flows are really cool. Those are the ones where it's a scroll list, but they increase in size until you get to the current one in the middle, and then they decrease in size as you go away. Apple loves these. So I would describe the mechanism that's supposed to happen. And then my QA people could look at it and go, but what about this? What about displaying more than 100 items? And I'm like, we should test that. So let's make sure that the cover flow animation will handle more than 100 items. Stuff like that, figuring out before you start the work. So customer focus. This is Agile, the way to think of Agile is test-driven development that is all about the end user. So I'm always very careful of somebody wants to do something. If they can't say it the way an Agile story would be, as the player, I want fill in the blank. As the player, I don't say, as the player, I want a cover flow animation for my inventory. No, the player doesn't want that. As the player, I want a way to quickly and easily access my inventory. That's how I would word that story. Yeah, please, that's fine. So the thing there is, in waterfall, you just go, and we're still committed to our deadlines, right? In Agile, you're like, okay, we'll now respec the work, and here is the additional work that is being assigned. So you're dealing with the work as, and we'll get into sprints and stuff. You're dealing with the immediate impact of those decisions on the team. At my last studio, I had this happen. I had lovely man, but couldn't make up his mind. An executive who's like, I want magical effects going off everywhere. And then he was like, now I don't want magical effects going off everywhere. And then he was like, well, you took it out, but I kind of realized I do want magical effects everywhere. I'm like, do you realize how much time we have spent on this? And I am now pushing back other work in favor of this. So what do you want to lose? Because I have a backlog, and you're now pushing things down in the backlog. So things at the bottom of the backlog, we probably won't get to. That's always a negotiation you have to have when you are working for an executive. This is one of the joys of the student projects is, yes, you have executive producers. We're there to help you. We're not there to tell you, no, it was purple, make it green. We're not going to do that to you. That's not what we're here for. But you will, in fact, at some point likely work with somebody who does do that. And another advantage in Agile is it lets you very, very clearly show here's the impact of these decisions and how it's pushing it back. Whereas in Waterfall, you can still argue it, but they may be just like, oh, well, just work harder. And I'm like, no, this is actual work is now falling off. What do you lose? So briefly, like I said, I'm going to spend like an hour next week talking about Agile work stories because they are so useful. But as the player, I want a quick and easy way of accessing my inventory and scrolling, moving through my inventory. So let's dissect that. So I'm thinking about it from the viewpoint of the player. Quick and easy. So I've now added a testing parameter. This has to be quick. It can't be like, and now we scroll through our inventory. And it has to be easy. It has to be something that somebody can use without needing a tutorial on how to use it. It's a great way of helping define what those characteristics are that you need to test. So this is the biggest one. And it took me a while to get used to this. So like I say, some studios still are like not sure if they want to be Agile, and they will have a very much a pyramid structure of management where you have a producer who assigns tasks to people. That's a phrase to watch out for. I don't think producers should assign tasks. I think people should commit to the tasks they're going to do. It's a very different way of approaching it. When I'm not going to say the name of the studio, but there was a studio that I worked for some years ago on a project that you would have heard of, and I was talking with somebody afterwards, and I was like, yeah, that studio, I mean, the way they had it structured, there was me, and there was another executive producer, or excuse me, I'm ruining the joke here. There was an executive producer, and actually 2 executive producers, and they made all the decisions, and they told everybody what they should do, and everybody just went along with it, and it turned out there were some terrible decisions made, and it was a terrible, terrible thing. And this friend said, "Oh, Ellen, I feel so sorry for you," and my response was, "No, I was one of those producers." So I don't think that works. I tried to be a benevolent dictator, because with great power comes great responsibility, but I don't think that approach works from the viewpoint of somebody who has been at the top of the pyramid telling people what to do. Because this room is filled with bright, talented people who have really good ideas and really good ways of looking at how to solve problems and what is a good player experience and all of that. One person should not be making the choices. So fundamentally for me, that's, that's what Agile is. The phrase that they've come up with is the producer becomes what's called a servant leader. So you're still responsible for many of the things of like, come on team, let's go in this direction. You're still the vision keeper in many respects. You're still the cheerleader, but you serve the team. You're not the boss of the team. And yeah, please, Drew.
What about if, like, some people have their own passive things, and one person wants to implement this thing, and the other person also wants to implement this thing, but implement it a different way. Don't you need to decide or say, no, you do it this way, you need to work on something else?
Ideally, they figure it out between them. That's part of the team owning the work. Because, again, it gets back to people doing their best work. Let's just take an example. I'm going to just pick on you guys. So you're working on a game. You each want to do physics. And ultimately, you're going to wind up doing physics. But what's the difference in the mentality for you, Joe, if I say, Drew, you're on physics?
I immediately feel like I have no agency over what I should be working on this project, and I feel kind of alienated also from you as my boss and my team.
You could eventually wind up in that employee retention problem area because, yes, you're absolutely right. Without you being a part of the decision, you just had some interesting work get taken away from you. You should be pissed. Absolutely right. That is what we're addressing here. So the best way to figure something like that out is, and this is we get into the product owner versus the scrum master, I'll talk about that, is ideally you two figure it out. And if you don't, there's another person in here who is the advocate for the team, not the advocate for the product, and they help you figure it out. So that bit is a bit dicey. The last studio I was at, we didn't have enough people to have a proper product owner scrum master split. The one before was awesome. But let me keep going with this stuff. So this is another, and I'll dig in more on a bunch of these things. Another big part of Agile, and this is where, yeah, Antonio.
So how do you address all those tasks that nobody wants to do but needed to be done in those cases?
So yes, because that happens. There's definitely the bottom of the barrel stuff. What I have done on teams is if nobody volunteers, I'm just like, everybody's got to take something. Who wants to pick first? And it's like, because okay, the installer. Who here is excited to do the installer for their game? Oh my God, yes. I love No, you're lying. Sorry. There is work to do on games that nobody wants to do, but it has to get done. That actually gets into that cake and ice cream for dinner thing, which I have seen happen on Agile teams, which because the team is self-managing, they choose all the fun stuff first. And cake and ice cream for dinner tastes great, but not really good for you. And eventually you get to where, yeah, there's a lot of not fun work that has piled up. So my approach with that actually is we front load those not fun things. So we've got the cake and ice cream for dessert where it belongs. We do that way. This is a huge point for everyone here. There are people who are like, you must do Agile this way. They can be incredibly non-agile and rigid about Agile, which I think is hilarious. You don't do that. You do what's best for your team. And that's the biggest thing for you as student team producers is I'm going to start going through a lot of actual processes that you can follow. You should not do all of them. Let me say this again. you should figure out what are the problems that you want to solve and pick the things that will make a difference. So, yeah, this is just a list of just the typical things. I mean, anybody here have had none of these go on their student project? Like, 1 through 5? You're good on all of them? Anybody? Takers? Takers? No. I figured not. This is all stuff that I'm going to go through. There are specific things you can do with the Agile techniques that will address these problems. This one, talking about that test-driven development, that one's huge. The definition of done. Done means testable. Done means verifiable. Not done means, I worked 3 hours on it, I'm going to stop. That's not what we do. Oh, and actually, this is the one that makes my husband crazy. Do we have any programmers in the room who really enjoy working on one task for an hour and then having to switch to another one? You really? Okay. Depends on the thing? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, see this, do you actually like that?
I usually like to have 10 things on my plate and like work a little bit of this and switch to that and that.
Okay, so you're a mutant. Sorry, Antonio. Good for you. That's awesome. Actually, that bodes well for you working in, as an entrepreneur, because you will be switching a lot between, like, you're doing business stuff and now you're doing code and now you're doing contracts and now you're doing other stuff. But I just know, speaking from my husband's point of view, he hates this. And this factors into Agile in a big way, that once you